This happened about 3 years ago, but I still think about it every day. My wife Sarah and I had been married for almost 8 years, and things had gotten stale. We both worked demanding jobs, and the romance had faded into a comfortable but passionless routine. After a particularly tense argument about our lack of quality time together, we decided to book a 2-week trip to the Amalfi Coast in Italy. "This is exactly what we need," Sarah said, scrolling through photos of blue waters and cliffside villages. A chance to reconnect. The way her eyes lit up when she saw the pictures reminded me of when we first met. I would have done anything to keep that spark alive. When we arrived in Positano, the place was even more beautiful than the photos. Our hotel room had a private balcony overlooking the Mediterranean, and for the first 2 days, everything was perfect. We explored the town, ate incredible food, and for the first time in years, we actually talked about our dreams, our frustrations, our future. On our 3rd day, we signed up for a guided tour of the coast by boat. That's when we met Marco. Tall, tanned, with an easy charm and perfect English, he captivated everyone on the tour, especially Sarah. I noticed how she laughed at all his jokes and kept asking questions about local customs and hidden spots tourists don't normally see. "Marco really knows his stuff," she said that night over dinner. He mentioned some incredible hidden beaches that aren't in any of the guidebooks. I nodded, happy to see her so enthusiastic. "We should check them out." "Actually," she hesitated, swirling her wine. "I was thinking of taking a solo hike tomorrow morning while you sleep in. You mentioned wanting to catch up on rest, and I've been wanting to get some exercise." It made sense. I'd been complaining about jet lag, and Sarah had always been an early riser. "Sounds good," I said. "I could use the extra sleep." The next morning, I woke up around 10 a.m. to an empty bed and a note. "Gone hiking. Don't wait up for breakfast. Back by 2. Love you." She returned that afternoon, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. "The views were incredible," she gushed, showing me a few photos on her phone. Something about her seemed different, energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. This became our routine for the next few days. She'd leave early for hikes or swimming and return hours later, glowing and full of stories about the places she discovered. I was just happy to see her so alive again. One night, after we made love for the first time in months, she whispered, "This trip was the best idea. I feel like I am rediscovering myself here." I fell asleep holding her, thinking we finally found our way back to each other. The next morning, I woke up early, surprisingly refreshed. I decided to surprise Sarah with breakfast in bed, but when I rolled over, her side was empty. It was only 6:30 a.m. On the nightstand was her phone. She must have forgotten it in her rush to leave. As I reached to place her coffee on the nightstand, a message notification lit up her screen. "Same spot as yesterday? Can't wait to feel you again." My world stopped. The pieces started falling into place. The solo excursions, the renewed energy, the sudden sexual interest after months of distance. I sat on the edge of the bed, coffee growing cold in my hands, wondering who was and what I was going to do next. I stared at Sarah's phone for what felt like hours, my mind racing with possibilities. Maybe was a female friend she made? Maybe it was a misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew. I decided to follow her. I threw on clothes, grabbed my sunglasses, and headed out. As I stepped into the lobby, I spotted Marco leaning against the reception desk, checking his watch. He was wearing board shorts and a tight-fitting shirt that showed off the kind of physique I'd never be able to achieve with my office job. I ducked behind a pillar as he walked out. Following at a distance, I watched him head down to a small, secluded beach about a half-mile from our hotel. The kind of beach that wouldn't be in any guidebook. And there she was, my wife, wearing a bikini I'd never seen before, her hair loose around her shoulders. She smiled when she saw Marco and ran into his arms. They kissed passionately. Not the kind of kiss you give a tour guide, or a friend, or anyone other than a lover. I should have confronted them right then, but something kept me frozen in place. Maybe it was shock, or maybe some sick part of me needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. So I found a spot behind some rocks where I could see but not be seen, and I watched. They spread out a blanket and started kissing again. His hands were all over her, and she was responding with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen from her in years. I felt physically ill as I watched them undress each other, as I heard my wife moan in pleasure at another man's touch. I couldn't watch anymore. I stumbled back to the hotel, ordered a bottle of whiskey from room service, and tried to drink away the images burned into my brain. Sarah returned around noon, her hair damp from swimming. "Hey, you, re-up early," she said brightly, dropping her bag on the floor. "I found this amazing little cove. We should go there together tomorrow." The audacity of her lie made my blood boil. "Who, SM?" I asked quietly. Her smile faltered for just a second before she composed herself. "What?" I held up her phone. "You got a text this morning. From M wanting to feel you again." The color drained from her face, but only momentarily. Then she switched tactics so fast it gave me whiplash. "You went through my phone?" she shrieked, snatching it from my hand. "How dare you violate my privacy like that?" "I didn't go through anything," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "The message popped up while I was bringing you coffee in bed." "Coffee? You weren't here to drink because you were too busy fucking the tour guide." "You, being ridiculous," she spat, but her eyes darted away from mine. "Marco's been showing me some local spots. I saw you, Sarah." The words hung in the air between us. "This morning, on the beach, I saw everything." She stared at me for a long moment, then her entire demeanor changed. Tears filled her eyes. "I am so sorry," she whispered, reaching for my hand. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. He means nothing to me." I pulled away from her touch. "How long?" "Just a few days," she said quickly. "I got caught up in the romance of this place, that's all. It was stupid. Please, we can work through this." But something in her eyes told me she was lying again. I grabbed her phone and scrolled through her messages before she could stop me. The thread with Marco went back weeks, before we even arrived in Italy. They been planning this chance meeting the whole time. When I looked up, her expression had changed again. The tears were gone, replaced by cold fury. "Fine," she hissed. "You want the truth?" "Yes, they've been sleeping with Marco. And you know what? He makes me feel alive in ways you never could. This marriage has been dead for years." Her words cut through me like a knife. So this trip was never about rekindling our marriage? This trip was about me finally doing something for myself, she snapped. "And if you hadn't been so pathetically grateful for the scraps of attention I threw your way, you might have noticed sooner." I'd never seen this side of her before, this cruel, calculating woman who could lie so easily and then turn it all around to make it my fault. In that moment, I realized I didn't know my wife at all. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. She laughed, a harsh sound without any humor. "Don't be dramatic. We'll work through this like adults." "Work through this?" I stared at her in disbelief. "There's nothing to work through, Sarah. They've been planning this affair for weeks, maybe longer. You used our romantic getaway as cover to fuck your Italian boyfriend." She rolled her eyes. "You overreacting. People have affairs all the time and their marriages survive. It's not like I am in love with him or something." I grabbed my suitcase from the closet and started throwing my clothes into it. I couldn't stay in this room with her for another minute. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "I am changing rooms. I'll deal with flight arrangements tomorrow." She blocked the door. "Don't be ridiculous. Where are you going to go? It's peak season. There won't be any rooms available. I'll sleep in the lobby if I have to." Sarah's expression changed again, her eyes filling with tears. She was good, I had to give her that. For years, those tears had been my kryptonite. Not anymore. "Please," she begged, grabbing my arm. "I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in a fantasy, but it's you I love. You have to believe me." I pulled away from her. "The only mistake was thinking you had any respect for me or our marriage." "I'll end it with him right now," she promised, reaching for her phone. "I'll call him and tell him it's over. Don't bother. It's too late." Her face hardened. "Fine. You know what? I didn't want to tell you this, but you haven't touched me in months. A woman has needs. What was I supposed to do?" This was a blatant lie. I tried to initiate intimacy countless times over the past year, only to be rebuffed with excuses about headaches or exhaustion. But now she was rewriting history to justify her betrayal. "I guess you were supposed to talk to me like an adult instead of sneaking around behind my back," I said, zipping up my suitcase. "Now get out of my way." If you walk out that door, don't think you can just come crawling back, she threatened. I am not going to be waiting for you. I laughed bitterly. Trust me, that's not a concern. As I pushed past her, she grabbed my arm again, her nails digging into my skin. You making a huge mistake, she hissed. You never find anyone better than me, and you know it. I looked at this stranger wearing my wife's face and felt nothing but pity. I already deserve better than you. The hotel manager was sympathetic when I explained I needed a separate room, minus the sordid details, of course. Thankfully, they had a cancellation and could accommodate me for the remainder of our stay. That night, alone in my new room, I finally broke down. 8 years of marriage, gone. The future we planned together, gone. I never felt so betrayed, so utterly foolish. My phone buzzed with texts from Sarah, alternating between apologies and accusations. I am so sorry. Please come back so we can talk. You being childish. This isn't how adults handle problems. I need you. Please don't throw away our marriage. This is all your fault anyway. If you been more attentive, this never would have happened. I turned off my phone and ordered another whiskey from room service. The next morning, I went to the front desk to inquire about changing my flight. As I was speaking with the receptionist, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned, expecting Sarah, but instead found myself face to face with Marco. Your wife told me what happened, he said, his accent thicker than I remembered from the tour. I want to apologize. I stared at him, incredulous. You want to apologize? For fucking my wife? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. It was wrong. I should not have. Save it, I cut him off. I don't need your apology. Just tell me one thing. How long has this been going on? And don't lie to me. Marco hesitated, glancing around the lobby. We met online, 3 months ago. On a travel forum. She said she was coming to Italy with her husband, but the marriage was over in all but name. 3 months. She been planning this betrayal for 3 months while sleeping beside me every night, while discussing our vacation, while letting me believe we were working on our marriage. Was I the only one who didn't know my marriage was over? I asked quietly. Marco looked genuinely confused. She said you had an arrangement. That you both saw other people. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the marble lobby. There was no arrangement. There were never other people. Not for me, anyway. His face fell. Merda, I am sorry. She lied to both of us. As if on cue, Sarah appeared at the entrance of the hotel. When she saw us talking, her face went pale. She rushed over, inserting herself between us. What's going on here? She demanded, looking frantically between Marco and me. Just getting better acquainted with your boyfriend, I said. He was telling me about your arrangement. Sarah's eyes widened. Marco, I need to speak with you privately. But Marco stepped back, shaking his head. No, I think we are finished here. I do not get involved in these complications. Sarah grabbed his arm. Please, let me explain. Enough lies, he said, pulling away from her. Goodbye, Sarah. As Marco walked away, Sarah turned on me, her face contorted with rage. Are you happy now? They ruined everything. I looked at my wife, this woman I loved for nearly a decade, and felt nothing but relief that I discovered the truth before wasting any more of my life with her. No, Sarah, you did that all by yourself. The next 24 hours were a blur. I changed my flight to leave the following morning, not caring about the extra cost. I couldn't stand another day in paradise with the woman who had shattered my world. Sarah alternated between hysterical pleas and vicious attacks. When she realized I was really leaving, she showed up at my new room late that night, pounding on the door until I opened it. You can't just leave me here, she said, her mascara streaked down her face. What am I supposed to do? The same thing you've been doing, I replied coldly. Enjoy Italy. Enjoy your freedom. Just do it without me. I made one mistake, she cried, trying to push her way into the room. One mistake in 8 years, and you throwing everything away. I blocked the doorway. It wasn't one mistake. It was hundreds of individual choices to lie to me. Every time you planned your rendezvous with Marco, every time you snuck out of our bed, every time you came back and lied about where you've been. Those were all choices. Fine, she hissed, her tears suddenly gone. Go home. Run away. But don't think this divorce is going to be easy. I'll take everything. The house, the cars, half your retirement. You'll be paying me alimony for the rest of your pathetic life. Her threat might have scared me once, but I was beyond caring about material possessions. Take whatever you want. It's just stuff. I am not staying in a marriage with someone I can't trust. Trust? She laughed bitterly. You never trusted me. That's why you followed me to the beach. They never trusted me, and that's why I had to look elsewhere for someone who appreciates me. It was incredible how she could twist everything around, making her betrayal my fault. Goodbye, Sarah. I tried to close the door, but she jammed her foot in the way. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, she spat. You'll never find anyone who loves you like I do. If that's love, I am better off alone. I managed to shut the door despite her protests. She continued pounding and shouting for another 10 minutes before the hotel security finally escorted her away. The flight home was the longest 9 hours of my life. I replayed our marriage in my head, wondering if there had been signs I missed. Had she always been this person, or had she changed? Had she cheated before? I never know the truth. When I arrived home, our apartment felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Photos of us smiling on our honeymoon, souvenirs from trips we taken, the blanket we cuddled under during movie nights. It was all meaningless now. I called a lawyer the next day and started the divorce proceedings. I didn't want a prolonged battle, so I offered Sarah a generous settlement. She could keep the apartment and most of our shared assets. All I wanted was a clean break. But Sarah had other ideas. When she returned from Italy 3 days later, she was furious that I already contacted a lawyer. She refused to accept the initial settlement offer, demanding even more. She told all our friends that I had abandoned her in a foreign country, painting herself as the victim. Most of our friends believed her version of events. After all, she had always been the charming one, the social butterfly everyone loved. I was just the quiet husband who went along with whatever she wanted. Only my closest friend, Dave, stood by me when I told him the truth. I am not surprised, he admitted one night over beers. Sarah's always had a flexible relationship with the truth. Remember when she claimed her ex was stalking her, but it turned out she was the one sending her self-threatening emails? I stared at him in shock. What? When was this? Before you guys got serious? Maybe 6 months into your relationship? I thought you knew. There was so much I hadn't known. So many red flags I ignored or rationalized away because I was in love. A week after Sarah returned, I received a text from an unknown international number. I need to speak with you. It's important. Marco. I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. I called the number. Thank you for calling, Marco said when he answered. I have been, how do you say, wrestling with my conscience. What do you want? I asked, not interested in his moral crisis. There is something you should know. Sarah told me many things about your marriage that I now believe were not true. But more importantly, she has a pattern. I was not the first. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I have a friend who works at the hotel in Positano. After you both left, he told me Sarah stayed there last year as well. With another man, not you. The room seemed to tilt. Last year, Sarah had gone on a girls' trip to Europe with her college friends. At least, that's what she told me. I never questioned it because we always given each other space for separate vacations and outings with friends. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely audible. Yes, my friend remembered her because, well, they were not discreet. Many of the staff knew. I thanked Marco for the information and hung up. Then I went straight to our shared cloud storage and searched for Sarah's photos from the previous year. There were plenty of pictures with her girlfriends in various European cities, but when I looked closer at the dates, I noticed a gap. A week-long period where there were no photos at all. I dug deeper, accessing our old credit card statements. There it was. Charges from the same hotel in Positano during that missing week. No charges for her friends, though. Just Sarah. The final piece fell into place when I checked her email account, which was still linked to our shared tablet. I found archived messages to someone named Giovanni, full of explicit descriptions of what she wanted to do with him when they met in Italy. The emails dated back over a year. How many others had there been? How long had she been living this double life? I never know the full extent of her betrayal, but I had more than enough evidence now to know that our entire marriage had been built on lies. Armed with this new evidence, I contacted my lawyer immediately. The divorce proceedings took on a different tone. Instead of the generous settlement I initially proposed, I now fought for what was rightfully mine. Sarah had not only betrayed our marriage vows repeatedly but had used our joint finances to fund her affairs. When my lawyer presented the evidence of Sarah's multiple infidelities, including the receipts from Positano and the emails to Giovanni, she was stunned. For once, she had no lies ready, no way to twist the situation. "How did you find all this?" she asked when we next saw each other at a mediation session. "It doesn't matter," I replied. "What matters is that our entire marriage was a lie." "Not all of it," she said quietly, a hint of genuine regret in her voice for the first time. "I did love you, in the beginning." I just shook my head. Even now, I couldn't tell if she was being sincere or manipulative. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. The judge was not sympathetic to Sarah's demands after reviewing the evidence of her infidelity and financial impropriety. I kept the house and most of our assets. She got enough to start over, which was more than she deserved. The aftermath was brutal. Depression hit me hard once the adrenaline of the legal battle wore off. I questioned everything about the past 8 years. Had anything been real? Had she ever truly loved me? I lost weight, couldn't sleep, and found myself going through the motions of life without any real purpose. Dave was my lifeline during this period. He made sure I ate, dragged me out for runs, and refused to let me isolate myself completely. "You won't always feel this way," he promised. "It gets better." I didn't believe him, but I went along with his plans anyway. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things did get better. 6 months after the divorce, I joined a hiking group, forcing myself to be social again. A year later, I was promoted at work after throwing myself into projects to distract from the pain. Then came the day I received a text from Sarah. "Can we talk? I am in town for the weekend." It had been nearly 2 years since our divorce. I hesitated, wondering what she could possibly want after all this time. Curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. She looked different, her hair shorter, her clothes more subdued than the flashy styles she used to favor. She seemed nervous, fiddling with her cup as I sat down across from her. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want, Sarah?" She took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not like before. I've been in therapy for the past year, trying to understand why I did what I did. It doesn't excuse anything, but I need you to know that I am sorry for how I hurt you. I studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd become so familiar with. But all I saw was regret. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "But it doesn't change anything." "I know," she nodded. "I am not asking for forgiveness or a second chance. I needed to say it. And I wanted to see that you okay." I realized as I said it. I really am. We talked for an hour, more honestly than we ever had during our marriage. She told me about her childhood trauma that she never addressed, her fear of real intimacy, her compulsive need for validation from men. None of it excused her actions, but it helped me understand that her betrayal had never really been about me. As we said goodbye, she asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" I hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Yes, actually. Her name is Elise. We've been dating for a few months." Sarah smiled, and for once, it seemed genuine. "I am glad. You deserve to be happy." "So do you," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. "Just be honest with whoever comes next." "I am trying," she said. "That's all I can do now." As I watched her walk away, I felt the last of my anger dissipate. In its place was something I hadn't expected: gratitude. If Sarah hadn't revealed her true self on that fateful trip to Italy, I might have spent decades in a marriage built on lies. Her betrayal had freed me to find something real. That night, I had dinner with Elise at my place. As we cooked together, laughing about her disastrous attempt to make risotto, I found myself watching her with new appreciation. With Elise, there were no games, no manipulation, just authentic connection. When she asked about my day, I told her about meeting Sarah. "How did that make you feel?" she asked, concerned. "Surprisingly okay," I said. "Actually, better than okay. I realized something today." "What's that?" I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you leads you exactly where you're supposed to be." Elise smiled up at me, Her eyes full of the kind of love that doesn't need lies or secrets to sustain it. I'll drink to that, she said, raising her wine glass. We clinked glasses, and I silently thanked Sarah and her Italian tour guides for setting me free. Blank. Blank. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for the supportive comments and messages. To answer the most common questions. 1. Yes, Sarah and I were legally married with a prenup, but it had a fidelity clause she didn't take seriously. 2. No, I haven't spoken to Sarah since that coffee meeting, and I don't plan to. 3. Elise and I are still together and going strong. Taking things slow, but they never been happier. 4. For those asking about red flags I missed, there were plenty. Trust your gut, folks. If something feels off, it probably is. Sometimes the best guided tour is the one that shows you the way out of a situation that's no longer serving you. Thanks for reading. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it and learned from it. I appreciate your likes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.